Hello, my name is Nathaniel Abbott with Unique Realty Solutions, and this is my free video on contract for deeds and their advantages and disadvantages for buyers. First, let's talk about a contract for deed and what it actually is. A contract for deed, also known as an installment land contract, is an agreement wherein the buyer makes installment payments on an arrangement similar to an automobile financing. The seller holds legal title to the property as security for payment, while the buyer has equitable title. When the buyer pays the full amount due under the contract, the seller delivers legal title to the buyer. Equitable title gives the buyer the right to live in the property, improve it, rent it, and otherwise enjoy all the benefits of home ownership. However, since the buyer does not have legal title, he or she cannot use it as collateral for a home equity loan. Although in some states banks will lend against an equitable interest in a contract for deed. The IRS generally treats a contract for deed as a sale, which means the buyer has the tax benefits of ownership. Thus, the payments of interest that are made by the buyer in possession are deductible as mortgage interest, even though the buyer does not have legal title to the property. A contract for deed seller must report the transaction as an installment sale to the IRS. Once sold, the seller cannot claim depreciation or any other tax benefits on the property. If the buyer defaults on the contract and the seller exercises his legal option to reclaim the property, the tax code treats the transaction as a foreclosure. The legal process for repossession of a property is not entirely clear in every state. Some state statutes clearly spell out the process, which is somewhat more involved than an eviction, but clearly less burdensome than a full foreclosure. In most states, the process is not clearly defined, so courts deal with a buyer's default on a case-by-case basis. Now let's look at the advantages of a contract for deed for buyers. The most noticeable advantage is that a buyer receives an equitable title, and this gives the buyer the right to live in the property, improve it, rent it out, and otherwise enjoy all the benefits of home ownership. A second advantage for a buyer is that if a buyer cannot obtain conventional financing, this might be the only way to go. It allows the buyer to agree to terms with a seller and make payments to the seller. And contract for deeds allow buyers to obtain financing in a shorter period of time because there are no appraisals or banks dragging their feet to slow the process down. Now let's move on to the disadvantages of a contract for deed for buyers. The primary disadvantage for a buyer in a contract for deed is that in the event the buyer has later financial problems, the process of foreclosure or cancellation of a contract for deed is very short. Usually a buyer has only 60 days to cure a contract for deed default in order to keep the property. For a conventional mortgage, that time is usually at least 6 months. When a contract for deed is canceled, the buyer loses the real estate and all the money paid on the property to that point. Another area where there are disadvantages are title issues. Since a contract for deed does not require the title work that a traditional contract for sale does, buyers risk buying a property with a bad title. Sellers do not have to deliver clean title until the final payment, so buyers are not certain that they will receive good title to the property. If the title conveyed is cloudy, buyers often have no recourse and cannot cancel the contract due to the encumbered title. Moreover, liens can emerge against the seller that damage the title during the term of the contract. And the last area of disadvantages for buyers are miscellaneous issues. And these include the possibility of the seller going bankrupt, going missing, or passing away, which would put the property into probate and jeopardize the buyer's contract. In that case, the buyer's only recourse would be to go through time-consuming and expensive litigation to fight a claim of ownership to the property. The seller could also refrain from deeding the property over to the buyer after the final payment has been made. Other scenarios may include the seller failing to pay the lender with the payments received from the buyer, or the buyer being unable to assign her interest due to covenants restricting it in the contract. I would like to thank you for watching my free video on contract for deeds and their advantages and disadvantages for buyers. And if you would like to get my free report on You Too Can Repair Your Credit and Achieve Financial Freedom today, just visit our website at www.uniquehousebuying.com. Again, that's www.uniquehousebuying.com. Or feel free to call us at 612-367-6025, and I would be glad to give you some more information. Thanks again.